Commitment is not goal-oriented. It's involvement.
Shakespeare at the Globe said all the world's a stage. We on the Globe now see all the world's a stage.
It's meaningless. When you're really committed or involved, you can't have a point of view.
Space me.
You understand that these statements are intended to be very controversial. I never make a statement as just a nice packaged piece of information about anything. But I do it deliberately and experimentally.
And I think they would find that if they tackled the problem that I'm working with, they would quickly begin to write the way I write. Harold Innis has the same problem. Yeah. His sentences are totally discontinuous. Yeah. Each one is a kind of little book in itself. And anybody who tries to read Harold Innis continuously goes mad. And because he wants you to use each of his sentences as a kind of world. Yeah. Not as a continuum. It's not something in a continuum.
But do you mean it totally seriously when you say that your books can be open at any page?
Any page, anywhere, yes.
Before I begin to speak, I'd like to say something.
Describing the office, not describing.
What does the artifact amplify or enhance in the case of any new form of medium or technology? A, what does it enhance? B, what does it obsolesce? And third, what does it bring back from a distant past that was unexpectedly scrapped earlier? And finally, what does it flip into when pushed to the full limit of its power? I'll give you a few examples of this pattern of these four phases or stages in the development of any artifact whatever. I just have in front of me, in isolation from other things, camera. A, it enhances by its snapshotting aggression.
Previously on McLuhan Unclaimed.
Isolated thoughts and actions.
But actually what's really going on is there is an integrity issue.
What does the artifact amplify or enhance in the case of any new form of medium or technology? A, what does it enhance? B, what does it obsolesce? And third, what does it bring back from a distant past that was unexpectedly scrapped earlier? And finally, what does it flip into when pushed to the full limit of its power? I'll give you a few examples of this pattern of these four phases or B stages. B in the development of any artifact whatever. I just have in front of me, in isolation from other things, camera. A, it enhances by its snapshotting aggression and private power over people. B, it obsolesces privacy. It retrieves the past as present. It brings back the big game hunter. Bringing him home alive means bringing people home alive. It flips into the public domain. The clock amplifies work. Until clock, what we call work was almost impossible to organize. It obsolesces leisure. It retrieves history as art form by fixed chronology. A measurable sequential chronology capable of visual time as measured by the clock. It reverses when pushed all the way into the eternal present. A nowness. Electric media in general. Electric media in general amplify information range, scope, pushing information into a surface environment by simultaneity, obsolesces the visual, the connected, the logical, the rational, retrieves the subliminal, audile, tactile dialogue, involvement, brings back...
How many thoughts can you cram in your head?
Rather, reverses, finally, all hardware into software.
For many moons, centuries, that the only way to learn is to go from what you already know to something you don't. In Plato's terms, led him to suppose that really all we could ever know was something we had once known in another existence. A déjà vu.
This is Louis Fortdale, July 17th, 1978, TL 4011B, Topics in Communication.
For many moons, centuries, that the only way to learn is to go from what you already know to something.
TL 4011B, Topics in Communication.
Marshall McLuhan, the director of the University of Toronto's Institute of Culture and Technology.
No, that's what I was interested in. I mean, how many thoughts can you cram in your head?
It isn't a question of how many thoughts. The fact is that when you confront the page at that speed, you apprehend it as a gestalt.
Has the eye.
I mentioned the telegraph miming the telephone, but long before the telephone was invented.
The higher the definition of the image, the closer you go to hardware.
How many thoughts can you cram in your head?
It isn't a question of how many thoughts. The higher the definition of the image, the closer you go to hardware.
Meantime, I suggest it possible to begin by noticing A.
That the universal condition of any public is unawareness of ground and obsession with figures, right out of the picture, so the ground can come up.
The criminal in society gets it this way too, without anybody trying to understand what goes on.
Well...
So you can see what we're talking about here is communication.
I'm looking at a phrase here of Francis Bacon, Lord Bacon. He says, aphorisms representing a knowledge broken do invite men to inquire farther, whereas methods carrying a show of total to securing them as if they were farther. I use the aphorism knowledge broken thoughts of presentation deliberately to tease and to encourage people to look into the situation. Now, the fact that it upset them is good. I take that for granted. I want my readers to be upset all the time. And this, he says, comes from using two actions, one against the other. I was very lucky to grow up in a society where there were no classes of any sort. The double action gives you the emotion of multitude.
This
is the way it is for everybody. That's what the emotion of multitude is. Feeling of universality, archetypal. My concern is conversation in which I make the discoveries. Now, very few people want to know anything. I make most of my discoveries while talking, not while writing. Well, for example, when I look up the word read and find that it means to guess, I couldn't bear multi-locational art. Anything I've ever. Well, that's fascinating. I have no desire to move into the world that I understand so well.
So Xerox, the electric thing, is a complete revolution.
And that's precisely why.
And it's away from the eye.
I do not wish.
It's all back to the ear again.
Move into it.
It's all acoustic.
Because I understand it, I much prefer the old mildewed world of the 18th century book.
Social responsibility, instead of just a sort of a private subconscious. You're an artist. Remember. An artist is primarily concerned with getting your attention. Whether he's a poet or a musician, his first wish and hope is to trap your attention. This is the first hope and wish of every advertiser. He's an artist, actually, to that extent. He wants to shape your attention, to shape your sensibilities, to create an effective pocket. Whether you believe a word he says couldn't matter less to him. He is interested only in effects, not in changing your opinions or thoughts about anything. And this is also true of a poet. Couldn't care less what you thought or felt about him or anything, as long as he gets his effect across. It's simply fantastic, the unconsciousness of our Western world with regard to the
rowboat on the Assiniboine and a sailboat on the Red River, and they were about half a mile apart. They feel they already know anything. All they need to know, they already know. So if you have anything to say at all, it's going to be very upsetting to them. So on the way to school, my mother and father didn't get along very well, and this was itself a kind of education, because to my brother and myself it seemed perfectly obvious to us that they were infants, hadn't grown up, and that they didn't know how to get along with anybody really, and they were just immature.
I always had the feeling that I had something rather important to do. And I think probably my father had something to foster that idea. My father was a great educator. That is in the sense that he loved to build young people up in their own idea of themselves.
A salesman, I'm a real estate man, totally uninterested in business, and very, very interested in conversation from morning to night.
Well, presumably he sold insurance.
Insurance salesman.
But he was more interested in talking philosophy with people. He was to sell insurance. He was sort of Irish. I think he was Irish express, and a wonderful fellow.
Yes, she was an elocutionist, again trained out of Boston by Alice Leone Mitchell from the Emerson School of Eloquence in Boston.
The amount of work that our children have to do in just looking and being in their environment is fantastic. Exhausting.
On the way to school, I could stop off and row my boat for a while on the one river. And when I went after school, after I finished delivering my papers, I could go down to the Red River and sail. And I did these things all the time.
How old were you then?
time Western world is finished. What happened 2,500 years ago with the discovery of writing, at least phonetic writing, every pattern that developed from that world of the visual orientation of man, all the laws, all the philosophy, all the individuality, all the civilization, literally civilization, the idea of the citizen that grew out of that world, finished right now. It isn't going, it has gone. We just have a little aftershine left right now. It's gone. I'm not being pessimistic. I'm reporting something that happened some time ago. It's just we're just involved in a mopping up operation. But the disappearance of the private person, the private family, you can see with the disappearance of the private person, everybody suddenly feels that private ethics are meaningless. And we call it permissiveness. And we don't feel we have the right to punish anybody anymore. Because society is really to blame. How can we punish anybody if we don't believe that anybody's responsible for anything?
As a small child, I was told at the dinner table over and over again by my father, would you get up and say that to a group of men?
Because you said things like
yes,
that.
because unconventional things.
Do you remember one of them?
No, I don't remember a single one. But they would be, they're no more outrageous than the statements I make today in my books. They're back.
In other words, you're perfectly aware. I was thinking that today we could talk about where you work.
Well, you can see the way we work.
No, I know.
It's called transparency. I stack one thing on top of another on top of another. Look at them all simultaneously.
That's how you work now. You always work that way.
Always work that way.
I mean, how did you write the Gutenberg Galaxy, for instance?
It's a long time ago. About happiness or about the childhood and so on. When I was a kid, I spent a lot of my time building boats.
Oh, yeah?
Yes, I was a carpenter. I thought I was an engineer, and I went into engineering.
Yeah.
Well, we started.
From childhood, I was in that position of outraging my own father.
Engineering. He was in the second year of a 5-year course.
Your own environment.
My own environment.
Overlays, mechanic juxtaposition.
Hate ceases to be linear in speed, by the way.
Overlays, pattern recognition.
About happiness. Happiness to me is something I am not much interested in, I can tell you that. At no period of my life was I interested in being happy. I was very interested in getting on with what I was interested in. And in practice, that turned out to be a source of considerable happiness, in the sense of satisfaction. When I was a kid, I spent a lot of my time building boats.
He was actually a pretty handy guy. He built, for example, sailboats. I used to have the plans for one of them. It's gone for a long time now, but I remember the name.
I was a rowing man.
Oh, you were?
Yeah, didn't you see my oar hanging downstairs on the wall?
Oh, yeah. Yes, I probably didn't notice.
Anyway, I've always loved the water, and I love size. If I had a rowboat, I'd be out in it every day.
How to build a racer.
And of course, he was on the Cambridge Rowing. So, you're looking at a couple of decades there, boating.
And when he got to Cambridge, he was a rower.
My oar
got into rowing. Well, you can't sail on those rivers anyway. The bridges are too long.
Very close because there's so many things we were reading that we found occasion to argue with, discuss. We went through the test of mistake, what's wrong with the world, the Mark Lowell book. Started to walk home, we've been written far away from it. We were still talking when I noticed the milk wagons going by in the morning. It was about 4 or 5 in the morning, we've been talking. And it was about 4.
ago, Professor McLuhan suffered a severe stroke in the fall of 1979 and has lost most of his verbal skills, so I could not interview him personally. However, I was able to interview his wife Corinne in his presence.
5 in the morning, we've been talking in that corner for roughly 4 to 5 hours. Somewhere, completely unaware of time and the genius of Chester and his paradox. Beautiful. And then, of course, disagreeing a good deal on a good many things.
What's wrong with
That's, I think, true. Except, again, that I had luck. I met people, too. But it was mainly a literary activity.
A book by Gilbert Keith Chesterton, What's Wrong with the World?
Yes, handed to me on a Winnipeg street by Tom Easterbrook.
In the local competitive leagues.
Well, good.
The mind, remember, works much faster than electricity.
And I was a southpaw pitcher for the Winnipeg Fireflies. So the people I went to school with...
Literally, the speed of light is not a fraction the speed of thought.
In your experience, because having been close to
Would you say I moved away from the scenes of my childhood?
and never to see them
Childhood.
after, say, certainly not after the age of 16 or so, never see them again.
So I don't think about them anymore.
Strange experience.
Didn't it even look you up when you became famous in 500?
Your life is continuous, then your friends are not
Being
continuous.
an academic,
They move. But in fact, it impoverishes everybody's life. Cuts you off from all
Never run into any of your friends?
memories.
No, indeed, I have not. Would have been so far away.
I have never seen it. Consequently, I never have any way of
People don't
judging
want to go back to Winnipeg. They often leave Winnipeg, but they go back.
how they developed. How did
That they would never draw on local talent for anything that they wanted for exotic effect. The natural. However, who cares?
I grew up in Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada, which is, very remote.
Because my idea of taking up engineering was so I could have enough money to become literary. I never dreamed you could make any money by being literary. So I deliberately went into engineering to make enough money to live on.
Yeah.
So that I could do what I wanted to do and then later read.
Like books.
The first right of every man in civilized society is the right to be protected against the consequences of his own stupidity. Now, what he was saying was that the ordinary modes of human living and endeavor create nothing but chaos. And if you want order, you have first to start with the fact of human stupidity and greed and nonsense, and put them in order.
As a very remote place, it's very self-sufficient culturally.
Back to Toronto! From Winnipeg, you idiot!
And
It might have become deserted. Some of them, like
I don't even remember their names.
Bill Pond,
But this, I think, is a great
became
loss.
general manager of Eaton's. And there was Doc Guy, I think he became a judge. There was Alfred Tucker, I don't know what he did.
The progression from the tribal through the East
And it would be very strange to run into any of them in their new roles and new situations.
to the
That this never to have had the experience of meeting your own
West shall shake the East awake.
schoolfellows, as it were, never to have met them again when they were grown up.
while yet you have the night for
Is a
more.
weird gap in anybody's life. I think it's now normal and accepted.
Really is.
And I think it means that your human experience is very truncated, very, very fragmentary. Your ability, therefore, to assess the potential of anybody in front of you is very limited.
All news is...
You've not watched the whole process.
Continuity.
The whole.
Right. That's exactly what you need. I went to high school with high school sweethearts and all that sort of thing.
Oh, yes. It's just, I just happen to know that there are a number of people here in Toronto, but I don't know their... But she, Peggy Orr became Mrs. Bill Morton. And I guess he's Professor Trent. He's head of this department. well-known Canadian historian. But she was one of our immediate, I was living 3 or 4 doors away on Griffith Avenue when I was growing up.
I became aware of what the church claimed to be.
You describe your conversion to Roman Catholicism in 1938 as a long pilgrimage and a solitary one, done entirely by reading.
That's, I think, true.
Now, I had no religious belief at that time at all. I was an agnostic. But I finally decided that if the church is what it says it is, you were also told how to test that hypothesis.
What's wrong with the what?
He said to me, I hated this book. I think you'll like it.
Wanted to do a cover on Marshall.
Yeah. Elon Musk talked about it on my podcast.
Church lunch on the top floor and all that kind of stuff, and all the guys, the heads of the departments came in, and he had to do his, dog and pony show and things like that. I was there.
But our lives are actually conducted at mythic.
Find things by deduction.
The etc. editor, the guy from California, Hayakawa. I knew Hayakawa. We used to go fishing together in San Francisco Bay, but it turned out that Marshall had delivered newspapers to his family.
A rose is a rose is a rose is a rose. She's doing that tomato can trick.
In Canada.
The house I grew up in Griffith Avenue still around.
And there were about 6 or 8 of us sitting in Howard Gossage's office with McLuhan sitting around a table.
Is that from Nobel?
That's page 135. Butler has a wonderful satire.
Whatever.
These are all Manipian satires.
The nature of the material lends itself to each Manipian satire. All of my work is satire. Manipian satire means just using the everyday world as a satire on itself.
Weed in a river of mine.
That's what the Manipian satire means. Fry uses the term.
Canadian film board movie.
Nori Fry.
Film board.
Butler has a wonderful satire called Erewhon. It means nowhere, backwards. Erewhon, nowhere. Which means utopia. It's not. Which means utopia. It's not. Which means utopia. It's not. Which means utopia. Which means utopia. It's not.
What's that got to do with narcissist?
Well, it had to. He has a theory about. By the way, Butler it was who argued that technology is the main instrument now of evolution. That the machine accelerates the organic evolutionary process 1,000,000 times.
Mm-hmm.
And that evolution is no longer in the world of nature, but now in the world of technology.
But it always was. If one takes technology as an extension of man, or you do.
Yeah, but on the other hand, it's easy to see that once you've done all this work.
Yes.
In effect, however, by putting the planet inside a man-made environment, nature ends the programmable environment. When Sputnik went around the planet, nature disappeared. Nature was hijacked right off this planet. Nature was enclosed in a man-made environment, and art took the place of nature. This was one of the biggest hijack jobs conceivable. When you put a new service environment around, say, TV with hologram or whatnot, you will find that TV has been completely hijacked. That a new service environment has come in. It isn't in yet.
A very serious person. At that same time, over across town, I think in the Hilton Hotel, there was a big meeting run by Dr. Hayakawa,
Yes,
the physicist. 1,000 people there, and so someone asked McLuhan, what do you think of the Hayakawa conference? So he said, well, I'm sure it's fine.
That a rose is a rose is a rose is...
I just want to say that 3 references that have the suffix GER while talking about Gertrude Stein.
A rose, she's doing that tomato can trick of just repeating the same word until you suddenly realize it is not a semantic entity, but an acoustic linguistic entity.
Rapid, by the way, magic is itself upon repetition. Rapid, by the way, magic is itself upon repetition. Rapid, by the way, magic is itself upon repetition. And print is a magical.
We didn't have separate rooms at that time, and we would divide the receivers, and we'd find a very good point in the crystal.
My fish-only cooking podcast, Ahi with Ali.
Crystal for a program.
Here's another. Adam Curry is one of the guys that invented podcasting.
And we'd fall asleep with the receiver on the pillow and our ear against it.
Among other things, meant leisure. The word school means leisure. And, schooling. So, persons who go to school are really people who don't have to work.
You went to Cambridge University, right?
The undergraduates at Cambridge were appalling, among others. Naturally, there were 3 bright ones.
But not more than in Canada.
No more than in Canada.
You went to Cambridge University, right?
Among others.
That means you completed school, right?
I completed several schools. I did 2 PAs and 2 MAs and 1 PhD.
This was the Broadway campus of the University of Manitoba in Winnipeg.
Winnipeg, Texas. And the head says that the light lights I and that was a real eye-opener.
The discovery that when you're on the telephone or on the air, you don't have a physical body. Yeah. When you don't have a physical body, you don't have an identity. When you don't have an identity, you don't have any morals.
Electronic equipment which is translating us into software instantaneously. So as you live in smaller and smaller space electrically, things that...
In the first place, let me say that the book will survive because of Scripture.
And enables us to be played back as software instantaneously.
Yeah? I see McLuhan as a 60s person in a way, where he was right for the 60s.
We're playing 2,500 years in reverse.
What happened 2,500 years ago with the discovery of writing?
The house I grew up in Bridgetown was still around.
Everything that happened from the 5th century
So the others are put back with the rest of the century?
Yes, and...
this area that we're in, what do you call it mostly? I would mostly call this Osborne Village.
The house I grew up in Bridgetown was still around.
What do you think he would be doing today? If he were here today, would he be saying the same stuff, or have things changed?
Yeah, well, no, he's a 60 person. 2060. That's when the crowd's going to know what he was saying. 2060, maybe early.
He was a man who was more of a mobile fidelity than any person. Chesterton's essays, anything you ever know.
At electric speeds, nothing in the USA makes sense. To criticize the critic, but Eliot makes this remark.
in one of your books, really. I think
I quoted it, haven't
Yeah, exactly.
Good. I wonder where he criticized and here it is.
Arias at the top of their voices, most of them beautiful, and the women in evening clothes.
Criticized page 54.
And counterblast, maybe.
Page 54.
Yeah, there's a wonderful book by Eric Havelock called Preface to Plato, in which he just mentions in passing that what Socrates' great contribution was
this dialectic
to the dialectic was the ability to say magic.
Sure. Yes. I'd like to call myself a unicorn. Mm-hmm. That's the kind of item I put in the dictionary. An unidentified flying object is an intellectual world. Which, an unclassifiable verb.
Well, does that mean that in order to lessen their fears, we attempt to paralyze different immigrant groups coming in at the state of their arrival?
And keep their cultures intact and separate.
Tactile space is the space of the interval. When you touch something, you create an interval, not a connection. And if there were any connection between your finger and what you touch, you wouldn't have a finger. So it's interval and it's resonant. The resonant interval is touch.
It's intact and separate.
And that is called The Chemical Bond by Linus Pauling. The book on the nature of the chemical bond is a story of the resonating interval. There are no connections in matter. There are no connections between molecules or electrons. There are only interfaces and resonating intervals.
Service environments have taken the place of political policies.
By immigration, you can get into Canada. I can see that a tribal society is not open. You can't get in. There's no way in. You are not allowed in. But you can get into a civilized society. But you cannot get into an African tribe.
No.
By immigration. Alphabet with non-gestalt, abstract, figure minus ground.
It's comical, of course. We have bypassed the literate world of hardware, left hemisphere technology, by moving once more again into the altogether world, the holistic world, the right hemisphere, the third world people.
Pattern recognition. Social effort. That is called the rational.
Mr. Jingle.
Prove their moral lives or their physical or social lives.
The mass media.
Well, again, you're making a value judgment. I'm not making any judgments about the mass media. I say, if you want to solve these problems.
The automata of the electric age.
Exactly. They're not your friends.
It created individualism. It created armies, empires, huge organizations.
The country is falling apart.
Which became a type of intelligence test.
Service environments have taken the place of political policies. Service environments have taken the place of political policies. That is for the meaning of the multicultural mosaic. The mosaic is static. It isn't in a state of constant inter-animation or interplay. No, it's static. And that's exactly the way the French want to remain. They want to remain just the way they are. And so it's not that easy. So it's an amazing, as I say, ploy developed to make this possible. I don't know if it will work, but I certainly don't wish them ill on this maneuver. Under electric media, you just have a world tribe.
The human family is the only remaining tribe.
It's the old Renaissance book religion versus new software masquerading as mystical body.
I've taken children's recordings and shown that their concept of media is identical with their concept of God.
Anyway,
Look, now that's very important.
So we've lost all, not only goals and objectives, all gone, but our ethics are gone.
Love is, I suppose, something pervasive and extended over a long period of time as compared with what is the phrase, the poor benefit of a bewildering moment.
Now, as the private ethic disappears and private morals disappear, there suddenly comes a strange new need for public morals. This is the tribal. The tribal man demands absolute integrity of the chief, no fooling around. And the kids today don't give a damn about private ethics, but they are very deeply concerned about public ethics. This is pure hypocrisy on their part, but they don't know any better.
There's a desperate human need to understand these processes. The act of placing the blame is itself escapism.
But the sudden flip as you permit people anything privately.
Value judgments in these matters are pure escapism.
Then suddenly public morals gets awfully tough.
They serve that function of taking us off the hook.
Consequently, general agreement.
Don Quixote, when he got a real dose of Gutenberg romances, rushed out, got on his armor, and dashed off into the Middle Ages to destroy windmills. And do you need any better example?
Finnegan's Wake is a drama. It's a play.
You have to stop trying to connect anything with anything anymore.
For example, you can get, well, again, we might disagree on open close, you see, because I call the ear closed and the eye open. But some people turn it around the other way. It doesn't matter. As long as they're both there, that's what matters.
Yeah.
The storyline or connected spaces are not there.
The artistic view, therefore, of the world becomes a normal view for all members of society.
The world we ignore.
Therefore, all media, not just the newspaper, uses bad news as a way of selling ads. All news is fake. It's pseudo-event. It's created by the medium that is employed.
Colossal fiction.
There is no honest reporting.
The word fake, actually, and the word fact are the same word. They both come from Latin facio, meaning to make.
On any medium, it is all fake, necessarily created by the medium in question.
The pool of broadcasters
was the rebellion of the medium against the bloody message.
And the actors in the play are the media themselves.
The medium finally rebelled against the most stupid arrangement of any debate in the history of debating. Zeus, who says to his fellow god, Narcissus, watch yourself.
Yeah.
Most people read ads about things they already own. They don't read things to buy them.
Of things I already own? I think I'm just looking for a sense of community.
But to feel reassured that they have already bought the right thing. There are lots of things better than civilization, but if you like civilization, that's the end of it.
The small children have made some of the greatest discoveries. The most famous discovery in our time, the automatic governor on the steam engine, from which we have the word cybernetics, was made by an 8-year-old child.
Oh.
Well, I mean the big discoveries. Not some little ones in our time, but the very few discoveries are ever made when people are looking for
visual space
and
literacy and spiritual religion. NASA, a bunch of highly endowed modern physicists, are totally under the domination of Gutenberg without knowing it.
Does.
It always was. If one takes technology as an extension of man, what you do.
And
Butler has a wonderful satire called Erewhon. It means nowhere.
He's not really threatened by the immigrant.
He blamed the immigrant.
Oh, yes, exactly.
the data's not very strong on that.
So what? If computers can do it better than us, then what's the difference?
Paranoia, though, comes from the
Which makes it
phasing out of the American way of life by electricity.
No.
We get Blondie is the power.
Are causing a very serious dilemma between our claim to privacy and the community's need to know.
14 minutes. Is your retention time that long?
I never...
Don't admit it.
It is big show business.
Totally.
Policies no longer matter because whether your electric light is provided by Republicans or Democrats is rather unimportant compared to the service of light and power and all the other kinds of services that go with our cities.
I know as if I'd given birth to it.
Debunking serious things and serious people.
This has become the new human occupation in the electronic age. Espionage is now the total human activity, whether you call it... This is called public relations, and it's called...
Womb. I saw a database.
My phone was probably about I'm not what I care. Our detectives are called private eyes. It would be meaningless to a Russian, a private eye. My gosh.
But because they're all public, but they do the same job.
No, but they don't use the eye. They listen.
CIA, FBI style.
You see, one's international, one's domestic.
We have no history of conversation or of the oral tradition except as they are revealed darkly through the written or the printed word.
Erasmus's Praise and Falling, Rabelais' Gargantua. These are Menippean satires that are debunking serious people.
Would you mind repeating that, please?
Something we got on instant playback just now before we came back.
Mr. Sayers would be an ideal person to have a word about the effect of the instant TV playback on a football game.
Well, I think this made TV watching more people watch the game now because they can see the instant playback. They can see blocks they didn't see, and this put a lot of focus on the line play.
To criticize the cricket, page 54.
Encounter glass, maybe.
Page 54. Here it is.
Yeah, page 53 for the page reference.
Look, I have a memory for page numbers. It's fine.
You do?
Yeah.
It's the cancer view. Numbers.
That could be.
Do you know your famous quote? If you want the essence of a book, read page 69 or 98.
Oh, no. I 96. 69 is 96, and they're complementary, you see. And has a great deal to do with nature of linguistics. 69, 96. I have, well, you try it on any book, and you'll find that you get a very strong structural image of the book on those two pages.
I've noticed it's a lot of page 20 to 69. All your quotes are always 69.
Is that true?
No, but sometimes. If I haven't read the book, I'll use 69, 96. I tell you, let me tell you something.
What an admission.
I mean, if I just want to sample quick. I had, across the street here, I had an office at 96 St. Joseph Street. And when I got this grant to do a study of media from the Association of American Broadcasters, the grant was number 69. And it came to number 96. And the moment that happened, I said, this is a very good omen. This is going to be a great project. And the project was Understanding Media.
Oh my God.
I'll show you the first form of Understanding Media when I did for this outfit. It's quite different.
Father John Culkin, a friend of ours in New York here, has a way of putting this matter. He says, we don't know who discovered water, but we're pretty sure it wasn't a fish.
Whence did the wondrous mystic art arise of painting speech and speaking to the eyes, that we by tracing magic lines are taught how to embody and to color thought?
Is concerned with this sailor who is caught in the vortex of the big whirlpool.
Isn't some of your thinking transcendental? And I said yes, and most of it's incidental.
Begins to study the way it works, and he sees that some things go down.
And, you know, casting his perils before swings. This is a phrase out of Finnegan, and it's typical of the technique of Finnegan. Joyce regarded the human language as the biggest storage system of human knowledge and perception anywhere. What we're doing with the computer up to now is merely giving it to the librarians and to the catalogers. But the possibility of retrieval as a form of discovery is something we all know from our own memories. When we recall something, we tend to make discoveries. We certainly tend to make changes in the pattern of the thing we know. His own use of that vast store of human perception was to retrieve from it in a pattern which made discovery natural.
Though he might have been more humble, there's no police like home. And disappear, and some things pop up again. And he attaches himself to one of these recurring objects and survives.
Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin. Who else? Meanwhile,
well-to-do nobodies
who can afford to be nobodies.
The Kardashians. This Harrison Schmidt fellow must be going, what the hell do I have to do to get famous?
The name McLuhan is probably rather opaque, but the name Marshall is less opaque. It is a rather luminous phrase, or maréchal. Means a blacksmith, doesn't it, in French?
No, Maréchal Ferrand is blacksmith. Maréchal is...
Newhart, I enjoy Newhart much more. As he says, his formula is to speak quietly and rationally about the most outrageous situations. The moon has lost all its glamour since the moon trips. But when you land on the moon ceases to be a romantic object. You junk it.
Hello, Tony.
Happy birthday.
Well, thank you. Do you keep a list of those?
No, but I saw it on the news today.
Oh, my gosh.
You're a public figure.
Oh, gosh.
It'll be fascinating to discover the genesis, the stages by which those buildings and that whole neighborhood came into existence.
That's it. I'm on the house number 314 Roosevelt. I'm 5 years old. You were there on that? Yeah, I'm staying on the bed for 2 months. That's my kids. Nothing else to say then? I don't know about 214 Roosevelt, but some of the other houses. Oh, you moved to another house? Oh, yeah. We were at 606. We live in a 507 Cleveland. The house I grew up in on Bridget Avenue is still around. It was a house that actually was occupied by a man who was prospect Torrent. We were together one night, years ago, and he asked me what street I was going up on. I said, Bridget Avenue. What number? 507. He said, I grew up in 507.
Isn't that neat? How much of your junior?
Well, this would be at least 25 years old.
Suddenly he was a...
Marshall McLuhan, what are you doing?
Lately I've been worrying about Phyllis Diller.
World of crazy adventures, circuitry, whatever, is already there as a total information farm. It is a teaching machine. Sure. However, what it's teaching is...
wrong. And And so I'm constantly striving to upset people. As a pedagogic technique, by the way. That is pedagogy.
Well, it's stimulating.
No, it's called dynamic teaching.
One of the greatest artistic and literary worlds of all time. This is not, because most of the writers I'm speaking about are extremely difficult. Like James Joyce, who incidentally is having a premiere tonight. I'm surprised that so many of you are avoiding it. The Portrait of the Artist is having a premiere tonight at local movie theaters. But Joyce's Finnegans Wake is one of the great world performances using all of the languages of the world simultaneously.
The Chinese ideogram is a wonderful instrument of unified sensations. It is so richly unified that most people in our 20th century have begun to study it very carefully as a corrective to our highly specialized alphabet.
Using all of the languages of the world simultaneously. And we live in such a great age. The Elizabethans lived in a chaotic, crazy world. The 5th century Athenians lived in a mad, this decaying and collapsing society, which led quickly to Greek tragedy, which is an account of their own misery. But the alphabet destroyed Greek society in 100 years. It was gone. The alphabet is a very destructive, fragmenting force, which the Greeks certainly did not survive. The Romans took them over in time to save something. That's preserved for us. Okay, but the effect of the alphabet on the Greeks was violent. And they gave us great institutions resulting from that misery that they went through. But they became so intensely individualistic and competitive that they destroyed themselves very quickly.
To a law-abiding duty of the citizen.
It's a civil war among the media.
That's right.
How about the Washington Post? Wasn't it also a civil war among media?
Yeah.
It was really mostly...
No, but listen to this.
Civil war in the media is a big section here that I didn't develop. Way at the back.
Things happening many levels at once, as in a myth. The word, I think I've mentioned once, is mythos in Greek. Word is myth. In an information age, the whole culture becomes word.
Therapy of the word concerns the work of the witch doctors and the shamans who did the cast the spells and so on, help people to get well. And the spells were cast in various art forms, lyric, epic, dramatic. Odes and so on were all part of the shaman's equipment. The genre of what we call the genre of literature began in the spells cast by witch doctors and the shamans. The alphabet drives people toward extreme forms of egomania and competitiveness.
This Mrs. Equitone is really a very useful bit because the whole British upper class mimic, with voice, they mimic the world of printing. This puts the lower classes way down because they still retain many of the characteristics of pre-print in their voices. So the class structure in England is quite simply simulating print with the voice.
Tell dear Mrs. Equitone I bring the horoscope myself.
One must be so careful these days. Now, Equitone, notice, is the name of speaking in prose. Tell dear Mrs. Equitone I bring the horoscope myself. One must be so careful these days. You see, you talk as if you were on a printed page.
Equitone, yeah.
Yes.
Equal to.
The alphabet drives people toward extreme forms of egomania and competitiveness. But that is only by people who take it seriously. There are very, very few people who are serious about letters or about alphabetic.
I'm glad I got to hear it. It was on Spinoza. And the multi-level exegesis.
The child of the future is a rather terrifying thought. It makes even science fiction look rather tame. What is in effect happening is a kind of extension not only of the learning process, but of consciousness itself into the outer environment, so that the child of the future is likely to be able to program consciousness to the same ease with which we have previously programmed curriculum. But I can't be terrified by such prospects, really, because these are also extensions of man. They are not ways, they are means of becoming more oneself rather than ways of becoming alienated from oneself. You can't possibly imagine a technology, except the most specialist fragmentary type, that could possibly alienate man from himself. They amplify our powers, they accelerate our powers, and they enrich the learning process enormously.
That's a funny thing, your balls are in your eyes. The print-oriented word.
Remember the old gag about Archie met a bear, the bear was bulging, the bulge was Archie. The world swallowed itself media-wise.
It was medieval. It's 12 o'clock. And I'm running out of air.
Ah, good.
Did you ever run out of air?
Hot it up. And the air is back again, all expanded. We had fun. That was great.
Yeah. That grandchild. I mean, like that's. Let's keep writing that letter to that grandchild. Is it a he?
I think
it'd be corporate.
To write a letter. Write a letter to your grandma.
To your grandma. Well,
oh, that would be a nice one too.
I'm my own grandma. You know.
That'll be the past tense. Can we drive you anywhere? We got the car. We're heading somewhere. Home.
Well, I'm going up to Fordham.
Let's go.
Yeah.
One second. Grace called last night. She was checking with me.
Right. Is she working today?
No, she's gone.
Okay.
Now, the piece is going to come out Monday. At least that was her best information yesterday. She said she was given a column of space. She said...
It's funny, the internet is here.
They don't know what the hell is going on with the internet. What they're talking about is what Dad was talking about in the 70s. And in the 70s, he was talking about the 70s. So now they're noticing the 70s, and they're calling it now.
They unwind at night in this mimetic pattern.